Well, usually American Muslims, they have a tendency to stand out and draw attention. This is especially true for women because of their conservative dress when they
Hmm.
tend to cover most of their body except for their faces and hands, which is kind of different from the regular dress for the American women where they dress in a more liberal way. So, can you tell us why do Muslim women have to dress in this way and why is it important for them to keep doing so in the current times?
I think it's very important. The parameters of dress for Muslim women and Muslim men are parameters that were established by the creator of the universe, by Allah. And those parameters do not change. They have been established for a reason. It's for the modesty of the Muslim sister, and it's to safeguard the morality of the society itself. In this particular culture, we can look back in its history and find that in America, it is of recent vintage that you find so many women exposing their bodies when they go out in public. One of my sisters, as a matter of fact, my oldest sister, when I look back at pictures and photographs of her in public school and going to church and things like that, she was very conservatively dressed. Nothing was being exposed on her body except for her face and her hands. And typically, this has been the mode of dress of most American women until recent vintage. And I say recent vintage within the less than the last 50 years, where there was a women's liberation movement and a free to do whatever you want to do movement in this country. But fortunately, when those kinds of cultural and social practice reach the extremes, that negative indicators begin to predominate the society, like the incidences of domestic violence or the incidences of rape and other things like that. Every society has the capacity to kind of, like a rubber band, when it's reached its outer limits of elasticity, to bounce back and to come back. We have examples of this in American society, where you find that in the 1920s, prior to the Great Depression, it was referred to by in American history as the Roaring Twenties because of the dress of many of the women at that time. It was a period of freedom of expression, but it was not freedom of expression within divine guidelines. And as a result of the extremes of this period of just expressing themselves without divine guidance, there was a kind of blowback. And the consequences of the blowback were horrendous for the family structure in this nation. And as a result of the extremes of this period, there was a period in American history in which the dress of women became much more conservative, and the norm became a lot more conservative than it had been at that previous time. So I do believe that the dress of Muslim women, while today may be something that is draws attention, that is outstanding, that because of the extremes and the extreme practices in this environment, that the dress of Muslim women will be imitated, as it is already being imitated by more women who want to preserve their modesty as the dress of Islam requires. It's a divine, the women dress, the Muslim women dress the way that they do because of a divine command to present themselves to the public in a manner that does not draw attention to themselves. So I believe that we can look at many of the fashions that are dominating the runways and these fashion shows now, where people go to decide what would be the style of dress for a particular season, that now headpieces are now being worn on fashion runways all around the world, that they find that not only is it modest and different, but it's also stylish. Muslim women cannot change with whatever fashion trend is predominating here in this country or anywhere else, because it would be a violation of what has been established as a dress code for the women.
Just to add to the previous question, a common misconception that some people have is that Muslim women are oppressed and they're forced to dress in such a way by their husbands, for example, or their fathers. So can you tell us more whether they do this because of their own will or whether they're forced to do so by their relatives?
That's a very good question. It would be hypocritical for me to say that in many instances, Muslim women in this country and around the world do not dress in the manner that they do publicly because of the influence of their husband or their fathers or grandfathers. And I think that this is a norm. Every father, particularly at a certain age, insists that their daughters dress in a certain manner. But beyond this adolescent and pre-adolescent stage of dress, Muslim women are choosing to dress in the manner that they do. There's a verse in the Qur'an, the book of the Muslim, that makes it very clear that women should dress publicly in the manner that they do so that they will be known as righteous women. And the experience of Muslim women in this country and around the world gives validity to this argument that's found in the Qur'an, that there's a certain level of respect that's afforded Muslim women. For an example, and it's not just unique in that way to Muslim women. For an example, not Muslim, but Catholic nuns, when they dress in their conservative habits and walk through the streets of the United States, you would be hard-pressed to find someone that would say make inappropriate sexual comments to them or to disrespect them, because there's some aura that surrounds this typical conservative dress. And the same is that with Muslim women. So there's a direct benefit on how others relate to them and respect them as practitioners of a way of life that demands that they display this public modesty. And so it's not a forced issue on the part of most Muslim women to dress in the manner that they do. As a matter of fact, it's a very liberating experience. And I'm saying this as a Muslim man with a wife and 4 daughters. And I know that my daughters and just other Muslim sisters, when they dress conservatively like that, that on a very practical level they are afforded respect that they are not afforded if during those times they don't dress in a certain kind of way. So it is an act of submission, just as all Muslim men and women are to submit to the divine guidelines. Muslim women, when they do that, they get the immediate benefit of having the respect, but they also benefit from their submission to the divine will. To submit to what they are commanded to do is something that benefits them in this world and in the next.
Dress codes sometimes act as a barrier against their integration in the American society?
Well, I guess it could to those who are resistant to modest dress on the part of women. Those men who have ill intention towards women would definitely find it offensive or a barrier to them because they can't see them and they want to see them. So it erects a barrier between those who have intentions towards these women other than that of respecting them for who they are and respecting them as human beings. And the issue of whether or not the women should modify or completely change their dress based on whether or not it erects a barrier is something that we as Muslims cannot afford to buy into that. The conservative dress should not be a barrier, but if it is a barrier, we cannot change our dress to bring that barrier down.